The Deeds of the Carpenter. A lesson in true character. In a small village nestled between rolling hills and thick forests, there lived a carpenter named Roland. He was known throughout the village for his silver tongue. He could tell stories, spin tales, and speak with great eloquence. His words were always smooth, charming, and full of promises. Whenever people gathered in the village square, Roland would be at the center, speaking of his grand plans and ideas. One afternoon, as Roland stood in the square boasting of a magnificent house he planned to build, an old farmer named Chara approached him. Chara had heard much of Roland's speeches, but had never seen any of his work. "Roland," the farmer said, "I've listened to you speak about your skills for some time now. I need help fixing the roof of my barn before winter comes. Can you repair it for me?" Roland smiled confidently and replied, "Of course, Chara. I'm the best carpenter in the village. I'll make your barn look better than ever. Trust me, it'll be the finest roof you've ever seen." Chara, hopeful but cautious, agreed to let Roland do the job. The next day, Roland showed up with his tools, full of enthusiasm and loud promises. He spent much of the day talking about how he would transform the barn, speaking in great detail about the craftsmanship and skill required for the work. Yet, as the sun began to set, Chara noticed something strange. Roland had barely lifted a finger. The roof remained untouched, and instead of working, Roland had spent most of the day talking and making excuses. "Tomorrow," Roland said, "I'll get started properly. I just needed to plan today." Chara, patient and kind, gave him another chance. But the same thing happened the next day, and the day after that. Roland would arrive, talk endlessly about the task, but do very little actual work. Days turned into weeks, and Chara's roof remained unfinished. Meanwhile, across the village, there was another carpenter named Davin. Unlike Roland, Davin was quiet and reserved. He didn't boast of his skills or make grand speeches in the village square. He simply did his work with care, speaking little and letting his actions speak for him. One evening, Chara passed by a house that Davin had built. It was a modest home, but every beam, every plank, and every nail had been placed with precision. The craftsmanship was simple, yet strong and reliable. Impressed by what he saw, Chara approached Davin the next morning. "Davin, I've heard little of you, but I've seen the work you've done around the village. My barn roof is still in disrepair, and I wonder if you might be able to help." Davin, without saying much, nodded and agreed to take on the job. The very next day, Davin arrived at Chara's farm early in the morning. He didn't make any grand promises or talk at length about his plans. Instead, he set straight to work. By the time the sun began to set, the roof was half repaired. Chara watched as Davin worked, noticing how his hands moved with skill and focus. There was no need for elaborate words. Davin's actions showed the true depth of his ability. Within 2 days, the barn roof was completely repaired, sturdy and secure, ready for the coming winter. Davin quietly packed up his tools and simply said, "It's done," before heading home. Grateful, Chara paid Davin and thanked him for his hard work. Word of Davin's skill quickly spread through the village, and soon more and more villagers sought him out for their repairs and building projects. As for Roland, his reputation began to fade. Though he still spoke of his grand abilities, the villagers had seen enough to know that his words meant little. They had learned that a person's true character isn't shown through what they say, but through what they do. One day, as Chara walked through the village square, he overheard a group of young villagers talking. One of them remarked, "Roland speaks so well, but I've never seen him finish a single project." Chara smiled and said, "It's easy to talk about what you can do. But in the end, we judge people by their deeds, not by their words. Words fade quickly, but actions leave lasting marks." From that day on, the villagers became wiser in how they judged others. They no longer listened solely to promises or charming words. Instead, they watched what people did, understanding that true worth is shown through actions, not empty talk.